I'm your host, Karen Hudis. This show is a series that has been coming to you from DC TV for 2.5 years in a weekly program called The Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's program is called Happiness. And the week before, we talked about our sting operation and catching the banking cartel in their lies. DC TV is a public access network. When the law for cable TV was passed in 1972, the citizens fought very hard and won the right to allow the public to tell their stories alongside the cable TV companies. Carmen Stanley and Maurice Jackson and José Starnes, floor director, have been helping me to tell my story here at DC TV. DC TV has been training me to be a TV producer, videographer, and editor. I'm also a lawyer and economist. I represent 189 ministers of finance and development on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, which is located in Washington, D.C. As a matter of fact, the World Bank is Washington, D.C.'s biggest employer. The World Bank and International Monetary Fund were created in 1944 at the end of World War II. The World Bank and IMF are very special organizations. The World Bank and IMF are also called the Bretton Woods institutions, named for the ski resort in New Hampshire, where 44 nations met and put the ministers of finance in charge of the world's wealth. They kept it secret that that's what they were doing because they intended to bring all of the world's hidden wealth out after 50 years. That is what we've done. We are converting the world's paper money to money minted out of the world's hidden gold reserves. The Board of Governors agreed to do this since the 12th of April 2014. How do the people who rule the world do this? They do it through corporations, which don't have to tell you who owns them or who they really are. The Dutch East India Company was established in 1602. It was the second corporation in the world. The first corporation was the British East India Company. The world's corporations are really just one corporation, and they've been creating corporations out of the world's countries, and even their governments and their cities and towns. They have even been creating corporations out of the world's people. When babies are born, they set up a company and give that company the name of the baby, and then they estimate how much taxes that baby's going to pay over its lifetime. And then they create a bond and float that bond on the world's capital markets and earn money on this bond. In Switzerland in 2011, 3 mathematicians, Vitali Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich, showed the existence of the network of global corporate control. There are 3 special city-states. The Vatican is the smallest country in the world. Vatican City is an independent city-state that covers just over 100 acres, making it 1/8 the size of New York's Central Park. The Vatican mints its own euros, prints its own stamps, issues passports and license plates, operates media outlets, and has its own flag and anthem. London is another independent city-state, and Washington, D.C. is the third. As we've seen, Washington, D.C. has been impersonating the United States federal government. All 3 of these city-states are run by the banking cartel, that is, the network of global corporate control. The last 3 segments were devoted to the bankruptcy of the banking cartel, U.S. military and geoengineering, reality, and actually the 4th was a sting operation. In the comments on this series archives on YouTube and Q&As in the social media, and I'd like to show you my email address, that's karenhudis@hotmail.com, we have shown that what you're hearing in this series is reality. What you're mostly hearing elsewhere are lies and propaganda from the banking cartel. The banking cartel has been holding on to power through fake paper currency and collusion. I tweeted on the 27th of July about the leak of the CIA memo that coined the term conspiracy theorist, and that seemed to have shaken a lot loose. We've been talking about the global currency reset, which is going to replace this paper currency with gold that's minted from the monetary gold reserves that were deposited with the boards of governors of the World Bank and IMF at the end of World War II. I speak for the boards of governors of the World Bank and IMF. The main purpose of this series is to inform and consult with beneficiaries of the global debt facility, which is the world's wealth that José Rizal and Ferdinand deposited with the World Bank and IMF boards of governors at the end of World War II. I've told the banking cartel to stop interfering with our business because they have no proper role anymore, as they are bankrupt and are getting wound down. I have bankrupted the banking cartel's corrupt agents and traders like Donald Trump, General Joseph Dunford Jr., Peter Newsham, J. Thomas Manger, Muriel Bowser, and Renwick Payne, that traitor who allows United Nations troops on U.S. soil without mobilizing state militia, all of whom have been lying and defaulted under commercial liens. At the end of the teleprompter, I've put the letters documenting how I've replaced the U.S. executive directors on the World Bank and IMF boards of executive directors and boards of governors. I'm using logic and reasoning and consistency to disarm these liars. A couple of days ago, a journalist in Israel sent me a menacing email, and I told Mossad where to get off. On the 15th of August, I exposed how the CIA tried to bribe me and said this was a harpoon in the banking cartel whale. The head of the snake has used divide and conquer to stay in power and has been hiding behind the Rothschilds and their ilk since the previous ice age. Auschwitz was actually a uranium enrichment plant. In a couple of segments ago, and the segment on the 22nd of August, I documented how the banking cartel tried to nuke Charleston and fire a first nuclear strike against Russia. The loyal U.S. military didn't betray their oath of office to support the United States Constitution and resisted. What they said was support war in Syria or be nuked. That was what Lindsey Graham said. Enough people see through these liars to bring the rest of us up to speed. People have been helping me because we're all in this together. That is how I learned of a 2013 video with 500,000 views showing the purge of nuclear launch officials. Secretary Hagel was fired after I requested him to court-martial Martin Dempsey and the other banking cartel agents and traders in the U.S. military. And there are links in the teleprompter. The banking cartel's censorship and tricks are backfiring. Instead, I've shown valid liens against the Federal Reserve banks from the $2 quadrillion worth of Treaty of Versailles bonds that are held by the global debt facility. People keep on asking when we're going to get on with the business of exchanging the fake paper currencies for the world's monetary gold reserves in the global debt facility. I ask myself this very question each and every morning when I get up. At first, what we were lacking was critical mass of people to understand reality. This was necessary so that reality could be manifested. we have reached this milestone. I encourage people to see a documentary that was done in Italy. I have said that I'm the canary in the coal mine because I'm embedded in the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF, and I represent the world's people as their proxy until they're able to end the corruption in the world's financial system, using the world's wealth that was deposited by José Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos. Many people are asking me to prove where the world's monetary gold reserves are deposited, and I have told them where to look. There is a much simpler way to prove that the world's wealth is here in the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF for the global currency reset. That is the $2 quadrillion worth of bonds that the Federal Reserve issued in the 1930s in exchange for the elite's gold. José Rizal put these bonds back in the global debt facility as the agent for the elite. These bonds are continuing to accrue interest. I have put a lien on the Fed using these bonds. We, the world's peoples, are winding down the banking cartel with these $2 quadrillion worth of bonds, and we're offsetting this against country debt. And there's an email that I've linked in the teleprompter where I nixed the plan of Wolfgang Struck to sell the debt. And somebody on YouTube said, actually her name is Pam Hornbeck, "Excellent presentation, Karen. Finally, some cohesive meat. I was just going to write you after last week's presentation to suggest that you get to the meat of information before your time is up. Thank you so much." And I asked Pat, "What do you mean, before my time is up?" That is just it. My time is not up. People need to take note of the fact that I'm keeping on keeping on. This shows what I have said all along. The Coalition for the Rule of Law, consisting of the G77, which is 134 developing countries, the BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and the U.S. minus the Fed, is much stronger than the banking cartel. Add to this the fact that neither Germany nor Japan will allow the United States dollar to crash, or they have no defense. This was what I wrote to the Electoral College about the bogus U.S. elections when Trump started masquerading because the U.S. Constitution of 1789 was not in effect. The link to this is in the teleprompter about reality in the banking cartel. The banking cartel is lying to you about everything. This is going to continue until everyone catches on, and it's going to snowball. I am now going to tweet this, and of course I'm going to put this program up on YouTube, and we'll be responding to the comments. I tweeted my letter to the owners of the Fed, where I told them that they are getting wound down in the global debt facility containing the world's wealth. The banking cartel knows that they don't have the world's wealth, that we do. Sometimes the banking cartel tells us what we need to know. There's an article in the April issue of The Atlantic about what makes us happy. There's something called a hedonic treadmill, which is a tendency to eventually get back to our original level of happiness. One clue is that we like doing things with people, and that's especially true for extroverts. Also, when people were assigned to buy goodies in an experiment for either a hospitalized child or themselves, those who bought treats for a sick child reported more positive feelings. The effect was the same in a rich country as in a poor one. Spending on friends and family is going to give us a boost because it brings us closer to our loved ones. And then there was a comment on YouTube thanking me for the goodness in my sweetheart. And this person said, "I'm truly grateful for what you've been sharing. all this information about the corruption and how they're doing it, why they're doing it, and who they are. You explain things in ways that are easy for everyone to understand. A friend here in Hawaii had a class on legal Hawaiian government, and someone in the class had mentioned your video on YouTube, and this guy said, "All roads don't lead to Rome, they lead to Switzerland." He went on to say, "Karen Hudes said the CIA headquarters is in Switzerland. Swiss guards guard the Vatican. The Bank of International Settlements is in Switzerland. He said Rome is in Switzerland. That means all roads lead to Rome." Well, they actually lead to Switzerland. The guy said to watch Karen Hudes on YouTube. I'm so glad I did. May you be protected by God's love and light. Thank you. And then there was another comment which was asking me to prosecute the banking cartel. And my response was, how can you prosecute the banking cartel when the courts are bogus? And the person who made that comment was named Hans. I said, Hans, use your head. And this is what Hans said. Karen, when the courts are rigged that badly, how do you want to work with the coalition for the rule of law when you have no court of justice, when all the institutions are inaccessible? We have no means other than a revolution. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I said, we don't need a revolution. We have common law. And I told Hans, pay attention and stop making stupid mistakes. And then Hans said, the international mafias won't give up any money unless they're forced to. And I said to Hans, do you want me to block you? We have exposed these crooks. They're not getting money from the global debt facility. Give up money? What money do they have? Paper money? That's what the global currency reset is for. And we're scrolling for a letter that I wrote to the Uniform Commercial Code Division. Ray, UCC record number 2009. Your letter dated April 30th, 2015 and mailed May 5th, 2015. Dear Sirs, I refer to your letter purporting to terminate UCC record, and then that record number, concerning the lien against the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago for Federal Reserve notes, 200 boxes of Eagle U.S. hardware, mother box, 5 boxes, Treaty of Versailles, mother box, 45 boxes. That's the $2 quadrillion worth of bonds. As I stated in my letter dated April 19th, 2015, and then there's a reference to a statute, that doesn't apply because subsection K says that the UCC was filed by a representative of a regulated financial institution. A regulated financial institution is an institution subject to regulatory oversight by a federal agency. The World Bank, which administers the trust called the Global Debt Facility, is subject to regulatory oversight of the National Advisory Council on International Monetary and Financial Policies. I filed UCC record and then that record reference number as a representative of and on behalf of the World Bank's Board of Governors. And I sent this draft to them, and they cleared it before I sent it. My letter to you of April 19, 2015 was cleared by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Pursuant to Article 5, Section 2 of the World Bank's Articles of Agreement, all the powers of the bank shall be vested in the Board of Governors. As the Secretary of State of Illinois does not possess any statutory authority to terminate the filing of a representative of a regulated financial institution, your purported termination of UCC record is of null effect. That's, by the way, you know, the Fed moved to Chicago after his name was Jesse White, after he terminated that filing. So we actually do have liens on the Fed, on all of the Fed. And then I say the Nantucket sleigh ride is continuing. The banking cartel whale is on a one-way street to perdition. The U.S. Congress is outed as owned by the banking cartel. And then there's a diagram that you can see in the teleprompter. It shows how the Board of Governors approved the global currency reset to transfer the world's wealth in the global debt facility from the elites and banking cartel to the 99%ers. Ferdinand Marcos was appointed by José Rizal as M1. Now the Board of Governors must authenticate each and every transfer out of the global debt facility where José Rizal deposited the world's wealth. The banking cartel got so upset with these tweets that they broke the links, so I reset them. And then I sent an email. The U.S. monetary gold reserves are in the global debt facility administered by the World Bank and IMF. And that went to the president of the American Bar Association and also to an officer named Elizabeth Anderson. The International Court of Justice's illegal and corrupt attempt to remove the world's monetary gold reserves from the global debt facility has been exposed. So has the CIA's treason and calumny. That means their bad actions. I discussed the Coalition for the Rule of Law and the transition to the rule of law with the International Legal Assistance Consortium this morning. That was when I wrote the email. The Coalition for the Rule of Law includes the United States minus the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is insolvent, that means bankrupt, and is in receivership in the global debt facility. The U.S. has no representation on the Board of Executive Directors of the World Bank after Sarah Aviel, then alternate executive director for the U.S. on the Board of Executive Directors, allowed Allied Barton to illegally throw me out of the World Bank headquarters on the 28th of January 2015. I tweeted that Aviel had breached the World Bank's Articles of Agreement, and 6 days later, she left the World Bank. Commander Michael Reese of D.C.'s 2nd Precinct was replaced the week following my complaint to the D.C. Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. D.C. Council's General Counsel Dave Zvenyak lost his job the week I tweeted his involvement in this corruption. The U.S. Treasury officials have not been confirmed by the U.S. Senate. They may not exercise the voice and vote of the U.S. on the World Bank's Board of Executive Directors. They can't continue this corruption by preventing me from entering the World Bank headquarters building. They can't prevent the world's monetary gold reserves from being minted into the world's currencies. And then I signed the letter as acting general counsel of the IBRD and legal counsel for the global debt facility. And then I wrote an email to the Senate Committee on Banking, and I said that I had seen a lot of the hearing on the web. And this also went to the International Institute of Finance. This is following up on our previous conversations. As you can see, I'm not going away anytime soon. I haven't informed people which person I had been contacting. This isn't important. What is important is that we acknowledge that the Coalition for the Rule of Law is in existence and that it is stronger than the banking cartel. This email is going to be posted today along with my letters to the Development Committee and the G77 containing the minutes of the upcoming spring meetings. And then I signed it again. Oh, I have 4 minutes. Wonderful. Well, let me tell you about what was just tweeted today. What people like to do is they like to tweet Donald Trump and me at the same time. And so I took the opportunity when that happened today to remind people about the commercial lien. And what that is that's under common law. I sent this to Donald Trump. I said, if you have any arguments to prove that what I'm saying is false, give them. Otherwise, I'll give you 2 more opportunities to correct these statements. And if you can't correct them, then I win a default judgment against you. And so Donald Trump could not prove that the U.S. Constitution of 1789 was in effect. And so he's an agent of the Banking Cartel. And I just tweeted that today. I reminded him, and I reminded everybody, that Donald Trump is in default. What does that mean when he's in default? I said he's interfering with the mobilization of the United States monetary gold reserves. That means he owes us all of the gold, the world's gold, because that's how he's harming us. So he's now bankrupt. And I used this same commercial lien process against the crooks that are preventing us from accessing the United States monetary gold reserves. And anybody who they're just a play actor. They can't prove that I'm wrong. And they are required to, or they go bankrupt. So I've put liens on the property of, catch this, Barack Obama. He lost all his money, and so did Muriel Bowser. She's now bankrupt. And so are all of the crooks. These crooks that are pretending like they are actually in office when they're really not. Because the United States Constitution is not in effect. And how do we know this? We've had a lot of proof through the years. For example, James Traficant, he was thrown out of Congress. But what he did was he proved that all of the representatives in Congress are actually play actors. They're not actually representatives. They've gone through the motions. They've done a pantomime. They've done very elaborate things to try to hoodwink you. But the fact remains that if the Constitution is not in effect, they're just bit play actors. I'd like to thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. We have discussed in today's segment happiness, how it is that we are happiest when we share with our loved ones. The global currency reset, when we bring the world's gold in the global debt facility that was held secret inside the World Bank and International Monetary Fund for over 50 years out to replace paper currencies. This is going to make us all happier. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Udis.